everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Angie Speaks. Some great news, we've just reached past the 200 subscriber threshold. Yay! And I'm really grateful to everybody who shared and who spread the video around. You guys are the lifeblood of the channel, and none of this would have been possible without you, so thank you very much. Please feel free to come and hang out with me on Twitter at SpeaksAngie. I'll leave a link in the description. And I've also decided to start a Patreon. So if you would like to support me and support this channel and see it grow, please consider becoming a Patreon. I'll leave a link to it in the description. And I'd be ever so grateful. So today I'm going to be talking about the occult and esoteric fascism, which is a really weird topic, I'll admit, but one that I think is far too often dismissed in conversations about anti-fascism on the left. This was actually a really difficult topic for me to research because it required me to delve into some pretty weird, dark spaces. So stick around and hopefully what comes next won't upset you too much. I'm just going to do a quick content warning. This video will include some topics that are very unsavory, including eugenics and race science and white supremacy. So if that's something that you don't feel like watching, I totally understand. But I do really think that it's an important topic that needs to be discussed. I thought I would begin the video with a quick disclaimer just to clear some things up. This video is in no way designed to disparage or demonize anybody that practices any form of occult spirituality. This is not a conspiracy video, and this video is not meant to put down or demonize any alternative spiritual path. In this video, I will specifically be discussing fascism and the historical occult movements that have influenced the cosmology, worldview, and theology of certain movements within the far right. If you're looking for a satanic panic, I suggest you go elsewhere. If you're looking for some kind of conspiratorial nonsense, this is not the place for you. I'll also be heavily moderating the comments in this video. If I see anything unsavory or disparaging, expect to get blocked and removed from my channel. Great, now that we've cleared that up, let's move on to the next topic. The current postmodern paradigm in the West has caused many to come to the conclusion that the meta-narratives of the past have failed to provide the meaning and increased quality of life they once promised. Organized religion has failed to provide answers. People generally distrust the government and economic systems, and most of the old paradigms have been exposed and deconstructed. All of this uncertainty has culminated in a search for meaning that has inspired certain individuals to look to the ancient past for a sense of resonance that they feel is missing within modern life. Humans have always drawn inspiration from and built cultures around shared mythologies and belief systems. Ideas are powerful, and ideas shape civilizations. Even if we dismiss certain ideas as superstitious and unscientific, these ideas still play a major role in shaping our collective reality. There are many leftist and revolutionary movements that draw inspiration and power from ancient spiritual belief systems and ecological cosmologies, like the good folks over at Gods and Radicals, Pagans Against Capitalism. You should go and check them out, I'll leave a link in the description. There are also many leftist occultists like Alan Moore, the famous comic book mastermind, anarchist, and ceremonial magician. The tradition of resistance movements and leftist movements drawing inspiration from ancient pagan belief systems, animism, and even occultism is a historical trend that reaches back far into the past. From the revolutionaries of Haiti, who waged and won an anti-colonial war against the French and drew inspiration from West African gods, to the radical green anarchist movements that draw inspiration from animism and other pagan belief systems. There is a huge difference between esoteric fascists and those who seek the power of mysticism to overturn oppressive systems and to connect to cultures that were stolen from them through force and violence. For the uninitiated, the occult is an umbrella term that is usually thrown around to describe various mystical, spiritual, and metaphysical practices that have very little to do with each other philosophically, although each paradigm has definitely influenced the other in some way. Some of the most traditional paradigms include Hermeticism, Kabbalah, the Golden Dawn teachings, Thelema, Satanism, chaos magic, and Gardnerian Wicca, all of which have different subsects and practices and beliefs. There have been many resurgences and repressions of occultism within mainstream culture throughout history, and occultism has had a major impact on the areas of culture, science, the arts, and philosophy. During the scientific revolution, many of the occult philosophies were dismissed as the antiquated superstitions of the bored elite. However, psychologists and philosophers like Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell injected these belief systems with a whole new vigor by introducing the psychological paradigm. They took these ancient philosophies, beliefs, and cosmologies and created a paradigm that made them compatible with secularism by applying these ideas to the realm of human psychology. The archetypes of ancient pagan deities were correlated with the archetypes within the collective unconscious. The alchemist's philosopher's stone became the gold of self-actualization. The Kabbalistic tree of life turned from a map of the universe into a map of the self, and so on. Many of these occult traditions are still flourishing today within the psychological paradigm. All occult philosophies and cosmologies have an underlying political undercurrent working beneath the mysticism, although many practicing occultists claim that politics and spirituality are two different paradigms. Many of them claim to be apolitical. I think this is mistaken because all occult systems that have developed throughout history were either responding to or against the social mores of the period from which they emerged. I've also noticed that within many occult philosophies, there's a lot of unsavory and abject philosophical baggage and historical baggage, and it's a shame that these often go completely ignored. For example, the Golden Dawn developed under a colonial period, and there are many residual racist ideas that have been left behind within the philosophy. And LaVeyan Satanism is basically Randian objectivism and egoism cloaked in a theatrical mask. There are actually many occult and New Age organizations that are politically anti-racist, feminist, and egalitarian, and they work very, very hard to dismantle oppressive systems and bring about a change in consciousness. However, there are many other occult groups that are vaguely liberal or apolitical. Their politics usually consist of vague allusions to environmental protection and maybe even feminism sometimes, but they don't actually engage in politics in any kind of meaningful way, and their stances on things like racism and white supremacy are shaky at best. Although many of these organizations are not explicitly racist, some of the historical and philosophical baggage within their belief systems can often attract some very unsavory characters. And these are the organizations that are the most vulnerable to fascist infiltration. The occult and fascism have had an unfortunate long and fraught history of flirtation. In 1813, Madame Helena Blavatsky, a Russian occultist and mystic, co-founded the Theosophical Society, which blended ancient European esoteric beliefs with Eastern cosmology that became popular among the ruling class during the rise of European colonial conquest. During this period of history, race science, eugenics, and white supremacy were not considered controversial topics as they are today. In fact, there was actually a scientific consensus back then about a hierarchy of races, which is pretty gross if you ask me. This hierarchy placed white Europeans at the top and dehumanized other races. Although these ideas were thoroughly debunked, they inspired many occult philosophers, including Blavatsky, who then formed cosmological models of human origins around them. Blavatsky's esoteric cosmology first popularized the idea of the Aryan race in her book The Secret Doctrine. Blavatsky believed in a mythical hierarchy of races and claimed that the most spiritually evolved race was the Aryans, and that Semitic people were spiritually degenerate. She also believed in certain sub-races that were spiritually undeveloped. Theosophy and many of the ideas within this paradigm spread their way into many different occult traditions throughout the 20th and 21st century, and there are even still theosophical societies today, even though some of them tend to try and distance themselves from these belief systems. Madame Blavatsky's ideas went on to influence a nefarious German occult sect called the Thule Society. The Thule Society then went on to become the driving force behind Nazi ideology and mysticism. It was a deeply anti-Semitic, white nationalist organization that drew inspiration from Germanic paganism, theosophy, eugenicist ecology, and ceremonial black magic. Its members included Hitler, Himmler, and Ernst Haeckel, a biologist and eugenicist that went on to found the ecology movement that purported environmental protection through racial hygiene and eugenics. The primary aim of the Thule Society was to bring about the reign of the so-called Aryan race through eugenics, through white supremacy, and through proving the superiority of Germanic people. Hitler and the Nazi regime strongly believed in the occult principle of shaping the world through the will, and employed the use of potent symbols and iconography to create physical manifestation of their wills in tangible reality. The Thule Society went on to inspire many different forms of Nazi mysticism that have sadly continued to flourish even within the 21st century. We are now witnessing an unprecedented rise in reactionary, far-right movements across the globe. America, Greece, France, Italy, the Philippines, Poland, and the UK, and many more, have seen a rise in militant neo-fascist organizations. Many of these organizations also employ occultism and mystical systems as part of their practice. There are many occult systems that are not explicitly fascist, but they hold many philosophical and moral ideals that align very well with fascist praxis and ideology historically. One example I can think of is LaVeyan Satanism. Not all practitioners of Satanism are fascists. Many of them are centrists or apolitical liberal types who dismiss the fascist iconography as merely for shock value and edginess. But when one looks deeper into the philosophical backbone of this form of Satanism, there is a deep undercurrent of objectivism, egoism, social Darwinism, and elitism, all of which align with historical fascist ideology and praxis. There are many Satanist groups that have embraced fascism and many who have rejected it. A specific example of a modern satanic sect that fully embraces esoteric fascism is a group called the ONA, or Order of the Nine Angles. This occult sect has created a cosmology loosely inspired by Aleister Crowley, who also had links to fascist ideology, called Aeonic Cosmology. Aeonic cosmology is the idea that human history and evolution can be broken down into specific periods of time, called aeons, in which a specific human group or race dominates the planet. They believe we are now entering the aeon in which the Aryan race will establish the Imperium. However, this effort is being impeded by Western liberal democracy, multiculturalism, and Zionism. They believe that by defeating these forces and establishing a new Aryan Imperium, they will evolve humanity and eventually reach the stars and colonize other planets. In other words, they're kind of batshit crazy. Chaos magic is another magical paradigm that has been unfortunately adopted by the far right in recent decades. Chaos magic is not by any means an explicitly fascist occult philosophy. Neither are all practitioners of chaos magic aligned with fascism. However, chaos magic is a deeply postmodern magical system that was created in response to the rigidity of older occult systems. This created a general disdain for dogma and societal norms, which could often dangerously feed into the anti-political correctness narrative that the far right tends to rely on. Although many practitioners of chaos magic claim that it is a completely apolitical system, I can definitely sense undercurrents of Fukuyamaism and neoliberalism. In recent years, the alt-right and other ethno-nationalist alliances have employed some of the techniques of chaos magic in order to achieve cultural ends. Specifically, the idea of sigil magic, which has now evolved into the idea of meme magic. During the 2016 electoral campaign, the alt-right and other affiliated groups popularized the term meme magic as they spread the image of Pepe the Frog across the internet as an emblem of their shared ideology. Meme magic and sigil magic is basically symbiotics mixed with psychology. It's the idea that symbols are invested with meaning, and a symbol is a way to bypass the conscious mind and enter the subconscious mind of an individual. Chaos magicians believe that sigils and symbols hold a distilled form of will and intent, and if spread, can have a desired effect on reality. There are a lot of people within the alt-right that believe that this tactic worked and aided their desired effect on the 2016 election. Regardless of whether or not you think that these guys are just adult LARPers and nerds that have played too much Dungeons and Dragons, or if you actually think there's some weight to the things that they believe, it's really obvious that ideas and symbols do have an effect on reality. Our culture is built out of ideas and symbols. There has also been a massive fascist resurgence within neo-pagan traditions like Astaru. Astaru is a Norse-based pre-Christian faith system that reveres Norse and Germanic gods. There are many practitioners of Astaru who completely reject fascism and really are very embarrassed that their symbols and iconography are being employed in this way. But there are also many members of this religion who do uphold the ideas of white supremacy and Aryan supremacy. Regardless of the efforts of non-fascist Astaru members, the iconography, the runes, the old Anglo-Saxon runes, the old Norse runes, the old Norse gods have been heavily associated with fascist movements. The recent Charlottesville fascist demonstration showed us these links as fascist demonstrators were seen sporting runes, Norse symbols, black suns, and other pagan and occult fascist iconography. There has been renewed interest among the far right in Nazi mysticism, relics like the Spear of Destiny, and fascist cult leaders like Charles Manson and his pseudo-mystical ideas about helter-skelter and a race war. All of which continue to fuel this subculture and construct a strange and terrifying cosmology.
I didn't vote. I don't believe in democracy.
Okay.
You know, I believe in Thule, the ancient city, and raising Thule. And I think that Trump is the candidate who's going to raise Thule and Atlantis.
Our current secular and scientific paradigm often makes us forget about the potency of ideas and the effect they have on our culture. Even if we're going to dismiss the mysticism and cosmology of the far right as garbled, superstitious nonsense, we cannot deny the power and experience that comes from a shared mythology and worldview. Even the craziest ideas can have a material effect on reality, and this is the essence of what magic is really about. It is about taking concepts from the abstract and moving them into reality through the use of will and focused intention. Many of the ideas within organized religion are just as far out, yet they have managed to build institutions that have impacted society and shaped culture. And what is culture but cult? We are currently living under the cult of capitalism and liberal democracy, and this can easily change for better or worse. I personally think it's really dangerous for us to dismiss this element of fascist culture within our anti-fascist activisms. This is because it has become disturbingly evident that we are not only fighting a political and social war against fascism, we're also fighting a psycho-spiritual one too. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you're not too disturbed by today's content. I feel like I need to burn some sage and like clear the energy of the room after that. It was pretty weird. Don't forget to come hang out with me on Twitter, and if you would like to support this channel, I've got a link to my Patreon in the description. Thanks for tuning in again today, and I shall see you later.